Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into something pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
It's all about, building companies that really thrive on freedom.
Yeah.
Like, what does it really take to create that kind of environment
Right.
where people,
Where they feel empowered.
where they feel empowered to do their absolute best work.
Mm-hmm.
And we're using this awesome book as our guide,
Yes.
Freedom, Inc. by Brian M. Carney and Isaac Getz.
It's a great book.
It's full of real-world stories of companies you wouldn't even expect, like Harley-Davidson.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah, like big old traditional companies.
yeah, very traditional.
Like FAVI and even USAA.
And they're doing amazing things.
Yeah, we're going to be uncovering some surprising leadership strategies that go way beyond like typical management advice.
Oh, absolutely.
Like this isn't just about, bean bags and ping pong table.
No, no, no.
This is about a totally different way of thinking about how we work and lead.
It really is about a fundamental shift in how leaders view their people,
Yeah.
recognizing that inherent value, that potential that everyone has.
Right. So it's not just about like superficial changes.
Not at all.
Like Harley-Davidson's a great example.
Yeah.
They went through this radical transformation, and one of the most striking things they did was, like, they literally ripped out the doors to all the offices, even the executive suites.
That no doors policy, I think, it was more than just symbolic. It was a deep commitment to transparency and trust, which is, not something you typically associate with a company like Harley-Davidson, but it's fascinating how they even involved the unions
Really?
in shaping their vision for the future.
That's really interesting. I imagine that created a really strong sense of shared ownership.
It did.
In the book, there's this anecdote about Tom, the head of accounts payable,
I love that story.
during a company-wide meeting about their new vision, all this freedom stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He asks, who represents you as the middle management?
Right.
It's a simple question.
Such a powerful question.
Yeah, but it gets at something really important.
Absolutely.
Like, are we all really in this together?
And it highlights how crucial it is to involve every level of the organization in a transformation.
Right.
When people feel like they have a voice, they're more likely to buy into the changes, be a part of it,
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, for another company featured in the book, FAV.
Yes.
It's a French manufacturing company.
They make, I think they make parts for cars.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, transmission parts.
And their CEO, Jean-François Zobrist, used this, like, really shocking metaphor to inspire change in the company.
Yeah.
He compared traditional management to prostitution.
It's definitely a provocative comparison.
Yeah, a little bit out there.
But it really gets you thinking. He was challenging this whole idea that employees are simply selling their time for a paycheck, doing only what they're told without any real initiative or creativity.
Right.
He wanted to, break free from that mentality.
So what did that look like in practice?
I mean, he made some pretty radical changes.
Yeah.
He got rid of time clocks,
Wow.
unlocked supply closets,
Wow.
and gave employees budgets to buy work-related things on their own.
So they didn't have to go through like 5 levels of approval to get like a stapler or something.
Right. The goal was to empower them to make decisions and solve problems without constantly seeking permission.
Wow, that's a big change. It sounds like he was like really committed to giving his employees a sense of like autonomy.
He was. And it's important to understand Zobrist's changes, they weren't just, random acts of generosity.
Right.
He understood something crucial.
Yeah.
Happy, engaged employees naturally go above and beyond to make customers happy.
So win-win.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
And the book has some great anecdotes about how even seemingly insignificant things can have a huge impact. Like Zobrist found out their single coffee machine for the entire plant was costing them a fortune and lost productivity.
Oh, I can imagine.
People wasting tons of time walking back and forth to get a cup.
Right, right.
So he's like, okay, we're going to put a coffee machine in every single team's, workspace.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing how much more efficient things became.
And probably morale went up too.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody was caffeinated.
Exactly. There's a similar story about adjustable wrenches, too.
Oh, really?
They were supposed to save money on tools, but people ended up, damaging equipment because they didn't have the right wrench. So it ended up costing them more in the long run.
Interesting. So instead of trying to, control every little detail,
Yeah.
he was like, okay, I trust you guys to do your jobs and to figure out what you need.
Exactly.
And those changes probably sent a really clear message like, we trust you.
We trust you.
Yeah.
And that's fundamental, to building that kind of culture of self-motivation.
Right.
Speaking of which, Freedom, Inc. introduces this really interesting concept of nourishing leaders.
Okay, so we've talked about leaders who try to, control every detail.
Right, the micromanagers.
Yeah, the micromanagers. But what exactly are nourishing leaders?
So nourishing leaders, they focus on creating an environment where people feel valued and empowered to grow. So instead of just giving orders, they're thinking about, okay, what do my team members need to really thrive?
So they're not just focused on the how,
right,
but also on what their team members, need.
Exactly. It's about understanding that people are at their best when they feel supported and empowered to contribute their unique talents.
Makes sense.
A great example of this is Robert Townsend. The CEO of Avis, he actually forced his executives to go through rental agent training.
Wait, so the top executives had to get behind the counter and rent cars?
That's right. By experiencing firsthand the challenges faced by frontline employees,
right,
those executives gained a newfound appreciation for their work, and it built empathy for the people they were leading.
I can see how that would be a really powerful experience.
It was about breaking down those us versus them barriers.
Yeah.
Another great example is Bill Gore, the founder of W.L. Gore and Associates.
Okay.
The company that makes Gore-Tex.
Yeah.
He believed in eliminating managerial titles.
Wow.
And creating a flat organizational structure.
No hierarchy at all.
Very little, yeah.
That sounds pretty radical, especially for that time period. It's not just about physical doors being open, but also, metaphorical ones.
Exactly. So how did that work in practice?
Yeah, how did that work?
Well, Gore hosted these monthly Socratic dialogue dinners.
Oh, with supervisors.
What were those like?
They weren't fancy dinners or anything. They were more brainstorming sessions where Gore would pose these thought-provoking questions, challenging supervisors to think differently about leadership.
I can see how that would lead to some pretty interesting discussions.
Oh,
It sounds like he was really dedicated to fostering this culture of continuous learning and growth.
He was.
Did this approach actually produce results, though?
It did. One of the most compelling stories in the book is about Birdchase.
Okay.
He started as a product inspector at Gore, but he rose to become a key cultural leader within the company.
Wow.
His journey is a testament to the power of creating an environment where natural leaders can emerge from any level of the organization.
Yeah, that's a great example of how, nourishing leadership empowers people to, step up and take ownership.
It's not about holding people back with rigid hierarchies.
It's about providing the support and freedom they need to reach their full potential.
Exactly. And that brings us to another remarkable story about self-motivation.
Yeah.
Jack Zulovich, a salesman at GSI, who single-handedly landed this massive $300 million contract with Euro Disney.
That's incredible.
This wasn't some high-powered executive.
No.
This was a salesperson who saw an opportunity and was just empowered by the company's culture to go after it.
And he went after
$300 million. That's just incredible.
It is.
I'm guessing there's more to this story.
Oh, yeah.
What did he do that was so remarkable?
So he heard about this opportunity with Euro Disney, but the deadline had already passed. Most people would have just, given up.
Right.
But Zulovich was relentless.
Yeah.
He tracked down the people in charge, flew to London on his own dime to take them to lunch.
Wow.
And convinced them to reopen the bidding process.
That's amazing. He was really committed to this opportunity. Was he acting on his own though, or did his company support him?
He was empowered by GSI's culture of trust. Company was known for its hands-off approach and belief in its employees' abilities.
So when Zulovich called his chairman, Jack Raymond, from Los Angeles.
From a payphone. Oh.
Right, this was before cell phones, and said he needed more resources to put together a competitive bid. Raymond was like, yeah, sure, go for it.
He didn't hesitate.
So they really backed him up.
They did. Raymond told him, we'll do it. It's worth a try.
Wow, that kind of trust is priceless.
It is.
It gives people the freedom to take risks, be creative,
and achieve extraordinary things.
It sounds like GSI's culture allowed Zulovich's natural talents to just shine through.
Absolutely.
That level of trust, I imagine, creates a very different dynamic between employees and leadership.
Oh, absolutely.
Speaking of large companies,
okay,
the last example we'll dive into in this section is USIA.
Interesting one.
A massive insurance company.
Okay. Huge company.
You wouldn't typically think of a call center as a place where, like, leadership thrives.
Right.
But that's exactly what happened under Robert McDermott, their CEO.
He was a fascinating guy.
Really? What was so different about their call center?
So McDermott, he was a former Air Force Academy superintendent.
Oh, wow.
He brought this, like, military-inspired focus on service and excellence to USAA.
Okay.
But instead of being, rigid and top-down, he instilled this deep respect for his employees and fostered a culture of empowerment.
So it was like that service mentality,
Yeah.
but also respect for the individual.
Absolutely. He saw his employees as valuable assets, not just cogs in a machine.
I'm sensing a common thread here.
Yes.
It sounds like McDermott also believed in treating people as equals.
Yes.
Regardless of their role or position.
Exactly. He believed everyone has the potential to contribute, lead, and make a difference. And he was committed to creating a workplace where those qualities were nurtured and celebrated.
So how did that philosophy translate into, like, concrete actions?
I mean, he did a lot.
Yeah.
Equal pay for men and women,
Whoa.
which was pretty progressive for the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Offered generous educational opportunities and encouraged employees to, like, move around within the company.
So they could, like, find their niche.
Exactly. Find roles that truly fulfilled them.
It sounds like he, like, truly invested in his employees' well-being and development.
He did.
That's really impressive.
Yeah.
Did he ever, like, talk about his leadership philosophy? Like, where did these ideas come from?
He did. He often said, all I really need to know, I learned in Sunday school.
Oh, wow.
For him, treating people with respect and dignity wasn't just good business, it was a moral imperative.
Wow, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that, like, true leadership is about so much more than just, hitting targets and maximizing profits.
Right.
It's about creating a workplace where everyone feels valued and empowered to reach their full potential.
And that's where this idea of grace comes in.
Grace.
Yeah. Bob Koski, the CEO of Sun Hydraulics, he uses this term to describe the culture these freedom-based companies embody. It's about treating everyone, from the newest hire to the CEO, with kindness, compassion, and a genuine desire to see them thrive.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It sounds like a very different way of thinking about leadership.
It is.
One that's, like, rooted in respect and a deep belief in people's inherent goodness.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder how much more we could achieve if more companies embrace this kind of approach.
It really does.
It makes you wonder, are there any, like, downsides to this kind of freedom-based leadership?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like, it sounds almost too good to be true.
It's not a magic bullet.
Yeah.
And it's important to note that even in these success stories, there were bumps along the way.
Right.
Remember Oticon, the Danish hearing aid manufacturer that we talked about earlier?
Right. I remember you mentioned they sent out this memo on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Outlining all these radical changes.
It was quite a surprise.
That must have been, like, a shock for the employees.
It was. The CEO, Lars Kolland.
Yeah.
He wanted to create, like, the most exciting, creative workplace imaginable.
Okay.
Get rid of job titles, project-based teams, fill the office with plants and trees.
Really shake things up.
Yeah, really shake things up.
And it sounds like the employees were on board?
They were. When he held a meeting to discuss the memo, over 80% voted in favor of the transformation.
Well, so they were ready for it.
They were hungry for that freedom and for the chance to contribute in a meaningful way.
So if the employees were happy and the company was, experiencing success, what went wrong?
Well, despite all the initial enthusiasm and success, some of the old command and control habits kind of crept back in.
Really?
Yeah, specifically the Products and Projects Committee, which was supposed to, like, help guide things.
Right.
They started micromanaging projects.
Oh, no.
And stifling the very initiative they were meant to encourage.
So they kind of lost sight of the initial vision.
I think so, yeah.
But why did that happen?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
And a valuable lesson, I think.
Yeah.
Building and maintaining a freedom-based culture, it's not a one-time thing.
Right.
It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
It requires constant vigilance, open communication, and a willingness to adapt as needed.
Yeah.
In Autocon's case, I think the leadership team, they didn't fully let go of the old ways of doing things, and that ultimately undermined the progress they had made.
It sounds like a classic case of one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah, kind of.
But what happened next? Did the company just, like, revert to the old ways?
No, actually, the employees pushed back.
They did.
They were so frustrated with how things were being managed that they staged a revolt.
Wow. So they weren't just going to, like, sit back and take it.
No, they weren't.
It's a powerful reminder that when people experience the benefits of freedom and then feel it being taken away, they won't just sit back passively.
They'll fight for what they believe in.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Freedom is precious, and once you've tasted it, it's hard to go back.
It speaks to this fundamental human need for autonomy. You know, that chance to shape our own destinies. When that need is met, people are incredibly motivated, engaged. But when it's thwarted, you can expect resistance.
So what can we, like, learn from Autocon's experience? How can other companies avoid falling into that same trap?
I think one of the key takeaways is the importance of ongoing dialogue and reflection. Leaders need to constantly be asking themselves, are we still living up to our values? Are we truly empowering our people? What can we do better?
It's like checking in, making sure you're still on the right track.
Exactly. And it's also essential to create those channels for feedback so that employees can voice their concerns and ideas openly without fear of reprisal.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's about, like, creating this culture of continuous improvement where everyone feels comfortable speaking up, contributing to making things better.
Exactly.
Freedom, Inc. also dives into the importance of specific management practices that can, you know, make a real difference in creating a more freedom-based culture.
It does.
And one of the most powerful examples comes from Jack Raymond.
Oh, yeah.
The chairman of GSI. He was, like, deeply committed to changing how managers operated within the company.
He really was.
He wanted them to move away from that traditional command and control. And become what he called nourishing leaders.
He was a big believer in that.
We've talked about nourishing leaders earlier in the episode. But how did he actually make that happen? Was it just a matter of telling managers, hey, change your style?
He was far more proactive than that. He, along with a consultant named Edward Tihard, they created this series of 2-day seminars.
Oh, interesting.
Specifically focused on changing managers' habits.
Like leadership training.
It was, but it wasn't just theoretical. It was highly practical, focused on developing concrete skills.
So these seminars were designed to, like, give managers the tools they needed to actually embody this new leadership style.
Exactly. And the commitment to this effort was impressive. Over a 15-year period, GSI held over 300 of these seminars.
Wow.
Across different countries, different departments.
That's a huge investment in developing their leaders.
It was.
It shows they weren't just, like, paying lip service to this idea of nourishing leadership.
They're serious about it.
And Raymond was personally invested in this initiative. He attended about half of these seminars himself.
I think it was 48% to be exact.
Wow. So he was really walking the walk.
Yeah, leading by example.
That's a powerful example of, like, leadership by example. But what did these seminars actually involve? Like, what were managers asked to do?
They weren't just sitting through lectures. You know, they were given the opportunity to choose which practices they wanted to change.
So they had some say in it.
They did.
Okay.
And their commitments, they were made public.
Oh, interesting.
And followed up on.
So it was about creating, like, real, tangible change.
Yes, not just talking about it.
So it was about holding people accountable for actually implementing these new practices.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just about changing, like, individual behaviors. It was about shifting the entire culture of the company.
It was a cultural transformation.
Another leader who took a similar approach was Bill Gore.
Yeah, the founder of Gore.
Right. He, as we discussed earlier, was a strong advocate for eliminating managerial titles and rigid hierarchies.
Yeah, he believed in fostering an environment of open communication and collaboration.
Where everyone felt like they had a voice.
Exactly.
I remember you mentioned his Socratic dialogue dinners.
Those were great.
It sounds like he was really intentional about creating opportunities for, like, open and honest conversations.
It was.
But how did he ensure those conversations actually led to, like, positive change?
He was constantly looking for ways to remove obstacles that prevented people from doing their best work.
Okay.
You know, he'd ask questions like, what made you mad today?
Oh, wow.
Or what was too complicated?
Interesting.
You know, it wasn't about finding fault.
Right.
It was about identifying and eliminating those little frustrations that drain energy and creativity.
It's about creating a culture where people feel safe to, like, speak up about what's not working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Gore understood that creating a nourishing environment wasn't a one-time fix. It was an ongoing process of listening, adapting, and constantly looking for ways to empower people.
It seems like there's a pattern emerging here.
Yes.
These companies that embraced freedom-based leadership, they didn't just implement like a set of rules or policies. Right.
And then call it a day.
Oh.
They were constantly looking for ways to empower their people.
Yeah.
And create a more like fulfilling work environment.
They were always evolving.
And they also seemed to recognize that leadership could emerge from anywhere in the organization.
That's right.
Not just from the top.
Yeah. A great example of that is USAA.
Okay.
We talked earlier about how they transformed their call center into this model of customer service excellence.
You're right. Their CEO, Robert McDermott, seemed to really understand the importance of treating people as equals.
He did.
Yeah.
And he believed that everyone in the company, regardless of their role or position, had the potential to be a leader.
Okay.
He fostered a culture where people felt empowered to solve problems and take ownership of their work.
So how did he actually make that happen? What were some of the key things he did to like cultivate that kind of leadership at all levels? Well, he implemented a number of initiatives, including equal pay for men and women, which was, you know, quite progressive at the time.
Right.
He also offered fantastic educational opportunities and encouraged employees to explore different roles within the company, you know?
So they could kind of find their passions.
Yeah, find their niche.
It sounds like he was creating a culture where people felt valued and supported in pursuing like their own growth and development.
It was about investing in their people.
That's really impressive. Did he ever talk about like what inspired this approach?
He did. He often said that his leadership style was deeply rooted in his personal values.
Okay.
You know, he believed that treating people with kindness and compassion was simply the right thing to do, both from a moral and a business perspective.
It's inspiring to see how his values translated into concrete actions that benefited like his employees.
Yeah.
And the company as a whole.
It really is.
It seems like that connection between it's like personal values and leadership is a recurring theme in these freedom-based companies.
It is. These leaders weren't just driven by profits or market share.
Yeah.
They were guided by a deeper sense of purpose and a genuine desire to create something better for their people.
It's remarkable how these leaders were able to create such like thriving and innovative cultures.
It is.
But I'm also struck by how like intentional they were about it.
Right.
It wasn't just like luck or happenstance.
No.
They put real thought and effort into creating the conditions for freedom to flourish.
They did.
Which brings us to, I think, a crucial question for our listeners.
Yeah.
What does all this mean for you?
Right.
You might not be a CEO or running a big company.
Yeah.
But these principles, I think, are applicable to anyone
absolutely.
who wants to create a more like fulfilling and impactful work life.
It's about taking ownership of your own experience.
So it's not about waiting for someone else to like create that perfect freedom-based culture. It's about like taking ownership ourselves.
Yes.
Looking for opportunities to empower ourselves and others.
Yeah.
Speaking up when we see things that, you know, aren't working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It starts with a mindset shift.
Okay.
Instead of thinking, this is how it's always been done. Ask yourself, what if?
What if?
What if we could work differently?
Yeah.
What if we could create a space where everyone felt valued, respected, and empowered to contribute their best?
I love that.
Yeah.
What if? It's such a simple question.
It is.
But it can like open up a world of possibilities.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of something you said earlier about like how so much of this is about removing obstacles rather than like adding things.
Right. It's about getting rid of those barriers that are preventing people from doing their best work.
And that could apply to like our own mindsets as well.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like what limiting beliefs are holding us back?
Yeah.
What assumptions are we making? that might be preventing us from seeing new possibilities.
It's so easy to get caught up in those old ways of thinking.
It is.
Especially in the workplace.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's also incredibly empowering to realize that we have the ability to change those patterns.
Right.
We can choose to be more proactive, more creative, more courageous in how we approach our work.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Freedom, Inc., here's a thought-provoking question for you to consider.
All right.
What's one small change you could make in your own work, in your interactions with others, or in your mindset to foster a more freedom-based culture?
It might be something as simple as asking more questions, listening more intently, or offering support to a colleague who's trying something new.
Right.
Even small acts of courage can have a ripple effect.
Absolutely. And remember, as we've seen from all these inspiring examples, building a company where everyone feels respected and empowered isn't a quick fix.
It's a journey.
It's a journey,
of continuous learning and adaptation.
It's about creating a space where people feel safe to experiment, to make mistakes, and to learn and grow together.
Beautifully said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep those innovative ideas flowing.